The Eastern Plains. Dare watched as the sun achingly grew over a horizon of flat ground. He stood on the edge of a tree line, the comfortable safety and enclosed trunks making his elven blood feel more at peace and his nerves at rest. Ravi climbs into the sky. I must move before I lose more of the day, he thought, as he stepped away from the trees into the open plains beyond. It had been a while since he had been away from the comfort of a forest, and the openness made him feel increasingly uneasy. His awareness grew of his surroundings, hearing the call of a bird from over a hill, the rustle of strong wind among the tall grass, and the chirps of insects within the golden strands that grew to his knee-height. He strode on for a good few hours, Ravi hauling his bloated belly over the world's end, lifting his audacious majesty into the sky, warming the cool air with his unavoidable glare. It quickly became humid and hot as Dare walked on, heading east. If the mages I am searching for are travelling from the desert south, the only entrance from that area is by the eastern sea. Opprobrium lands are to the west, and the requirement of water gives them only one area where they could travel through safely. Hopefully I can get to them in time. Anyone available to be saved must be made an effort for. Ravi continued to climb towards his apex, increasing in radiance as he travelled and heating the plains around Dare. Sweat beaded upon Dare's brow and dripped into his eyes as he walked, his dark hair sucking up the heat and warming his back into a sweaty mess. The humidity grew as the grass around him releases pent-up moisture, steaming into the air and making his surroundings stuffier and harder to travel through. No cover appeared for miles, and as he continued to walk and eventually stumble through the thick grass, his legs became weaker in the heat. He stopped at midday, pulling out a water skin from his small pack and drinking thankfully from it. The water was warm, yet still cooler than the surrounding air, which was sticky and thick. He squinted into the distance, attempting to discern any cover ahead, yet none revealed itself. Instead, his eyes got lost in the slight sway of repetitive grass for a short while, its mesmerizing shifts and flits among the slight breeze becoming an enthralling sight for a time. A sudden boom shook him from his engrossment, startling him with its invasive explosiveness. Looking northwest toward the mountain ranges that were barely visible, he spotted distant clouds of thick, heavy darkness and sloughs of rain pummeling the grass. The change of weather was easily miles away, though, and with the wind direction he'd be extremely lucky to have such a climate approach him and cool his day, though it may bring him worse issues than he was facing now. The thunder continued for the remaining day, rumbling in the distance and teasing him with the possibility of sweet release from Ravi's unforgiving stare. The sun slowly lowered itself as Dare continued, achingly slow with its descent and ease of heat. Evening drew in, the sun to his back as he plodded on, and the distant rumbling of thunder still rippling to him across the open land. Some time passed before something bothered his ears as he walked, a thundering that didn't quite match the distant weather. He looked up and found himself in a slight depression among the plains, and nearby a more continuous rumble rolled across the ground towards him. He climbed to a nearby rise, attempting to discern what was making the continuous cacophony. What greeted him, with the encroachment of dusk and Ravi's blinding light behind him, was an intriguing sight. Below was a caravan of people, all riding horses and protectively surrounding a trail of carts and mobile tents. They rode in silence, the constant rumbling coming from the large amount of horses as they travelled across the countryside with their strong hooves. All the animals were ridden bareback, their riders using no stirrups, bits, reins, or saddles. The horses were mostly fair in colour, though some were dappled or darker. However, the strangest part about them was their manes and skirts. Each of them glittered in the sunset, reflecting and refracting light with a dazzling abundance of colour. As he looked down upon the travelling caravan, a snort startled him from behind. He turned in defensive surprise and found a horse and rider behind him, abnormally close for such a large animal. His rider seemed unhappy, almost angry with Dare's presence, as his steed pawed the ground with impatience. Now that one of the horses was closer, Dare was even more surprised. The mane and skirt of the animal shimmered and caught the light by being made of glass. While the horse's coat was normal, the hair upon its crest and tail were free-moving, while also being cobweb-thin strands of glass that acted like normal hair. The follicles of glass cascaded down its side and freely flowed when the animal moved, yet the crystalline hair looked as dainty and beautiful as polished crystal. It shimmered like a fired diamond in the sunset, catching each cut in the material with every possible hue in Lux's spectrum. The rider looked more annoyed as Dare stared in wonder, and pointed a hatchet toward him, then spoke. "Tu quises?" he asked angrily. Dare stumbled for words as he tried to reply in the less common language. Ego sum, he started, but as he began, another rider rode up to them on the ridge, eyeing him warily.
Quiste stile?
The second asked the first.
Non dixit, ad alios,
the first responded. Both their voices were commanding in their own right, yet somehow soft in their approach. They're more worried about me than I am of them, Dare realized, as the second muttered something to the first, who then turned and rode back towards the caravan.
Who are you?
The remaining rider asked, in a thick accent that accentuated the R's in his speech.
Answer, for we do not take kindly to those who wander our plains without good reason.
My name's Dare. I'm travelling east towards the sea, Dare responded carefully.
You are alone?
The rider asked. Dare nodded in response.
It is rare to see an elf so far from civilization or forest. You will not last the night in these plains without numbers, and we cannot let you go when you know where we are. You shall join us until morning, to ensure you are not attempting to give away our location to those who will hunt our steeds and people. Come.
His horse turned, and he waited for Dare to begin walking until the animal moved. Down below, the caravans had fanned out into a protective circle, riders securing a perimeter as a camp was quickly erected.
You will not receive much talk from us, and you do not speak your common tongue. However, you shall be cared for as long as you are respectful, and do not try to leave until morning. Salutum, frater!
A rider interrupted as they passed. Dare's new companion returned the words to the rider before turning back to him.
I am Gribe. This is Stella Iactaret.
He patted his horse's side affectionately as he spoke the second name.
Come, I shall take you to our leader. She will speak to you before you are allowed to stay.
Dare followed Gribe towards a larger tent than the rest off in the distance, that was surrounded by horses and a few riders. While about it, places of drink and music began to permeate the now cool evening air as the sun gently set on the horizon.